Mind telling me what you're doing here?
I'm just heading out to grab some groceries. It's my driveway.
Uh-huh. Let me see some ID.
I don't have to show you my ID for standing on my own property.
Sir, I'm not gonna ask again. Hand it over or this goes a different way.
You're threatening me for buying groceries? Here, maybe this will clear things up. State Judge Marcus Cole.
Officer Jake Foster was a rookie cop, eager to prove himself, but lacking the experience to make sound judgments. It was a quiet morning in Miami, and he was patrolling a suburban neighborhood when he saw a black man in casual attire walking towards a tidy driveway. Foster, responding to a vague call about a suspicious person, made the fatal mistake of assuming the man didn't belong there. The man was Judge Marcus Caldwell, an accomplished black judge in his 30s, heading out to buy groceries. When Foster stopped him and aggressively demanded ID, Caldwell remained calm and explained his purpose. Foster, escalating the situation, became increasingly aggressive, threatening to arrest the judge for failure to cooperate. That's when Caldwell revealed his badge, a government-issued judge's ID. What happened next destroyed Foster's career, resulted in a $7 million lawsuit, and exposed the deep-seated issues of racial profiling within law enforcement. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Judge Marcus Caldwell woke at 6:30 a.m., like he did most Saturday mornings. Coffee first, then a quick scan of the morning news. Check emails. Plan the day ahead. At 36 years old, Caldwell had served as a Superior Court judge in Miami-Dade County for 4 years. Before that, he'd been a prosecutor for 7 years, working his way up from misdemeanors to felonies, building a reputation for being thorough, fair, and unshakable under pressure. His colleagues respected him. Defense attorneys knew better than to come unprepared to his courtroom. Prosecutors valued his integrity. He'd handled hundreds of cases, drug offenses, violent crimes, white-collar fraud, and his decisions were rarely overturned on appeal. But that Saturday morning, Judge Marcus Caldwell wasn't thinking about court. He wasn't reviewing case files or preparing for Monday's docket. He was thinking about breakfast. He'd run out of eggs and coffee creamer, and maybe he'd grab some fruit while he was out. So he pulled on a light black hoodie, blue jeans, and sneakers. Casual, comfortable, the kind of outfit anyone wears when they're running a quick errand on the weekend. He grabbed his keys, his wallet, and stepped out of his house into the cool Miami morning. The neighborhood was quiet. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, cars parked neatly in driveways. The kind of place where people walk their dogs, jog before work, and wave to neighbors. Caldwell had lived here for 3 years. He knew his neighbors. They knew him. He belonged. But belonging, for a black man in America, is never guaranteed. Officer Jake Foster was 24 years old and had been with the Miami Police Department for 2 years. 2 years of trying to prove himself. 2 years of wanting to be more than just another rookie. 2 years of believing that assertiveness equaled competence. Foster had graduated from the academy with decent marks. Not the top of his class, but solid enough. His training officer had noted in evaluations that Foster was enthusiastic but occasionally impulsive and needs to develop better judgment in determining when intervention is necessary. But Foster had been cleared for solo patrol anyway, because the department was understaffed, because supervisors were stretched thin, because red flags are easy to ignore when you need officers on the street. That morning, Foster was cruising through a suburban neighborhood on the west side of Miami. His shift had been uneventful so far. A couple of traffic stops, a noise complaint that turned out to be nothing. He was bored, looking for something to do, something that would make him feel like he was actually making a difference. At 8:47 a.m., a call came through dispatch. Unit 12, we have a report of a suspicious person in the area of Coral Way and 57th Avenue. Caller states they saw someone they don't recognize walking through the neighborhood. Foster responded immediately. Unit 12, copy. En route. He turned onto Coral Way, scanning the street, looking for anything out of place, any sign of the suspicious person. And then he saw him, a black man, walking down a driveway, wearing a hoodie, moving at a casual pace. To anyone else, it would have looked like a resident heading out for the day, someone who lived there, someone who belonged. But to Jake Foster, eager, inexperienced, and operating on assumptions instead of facts, it looked suspicious. He slowed his patrol car and pulled to the curb. This was it, his chance to be proactive, to show initiative, to prove he wasn't just another rookie. He didn't verify the address. He didn't check if there were any actual complaints about this specific person. He didn't pause to ask himself if a man walking out of a house in broad daylight was really worth confronting. He just acted. Marcus Caldwell was halfway down his driveway when he noticed the patrol car. He'd seen it before. Cops drove through the neighborhood regularly. It never bothered him. He had no reason to feel threatened by police presence. But then the car stopped, right in front of his house, and the officer stepped out. Caldwell paused, keys still in his hand, and watched as the young officer walked toward him with purpose. His first thought wasn't fear. It was curiosity. Is something wrong? Did something happen in the neighborhood? But then he saw the officer's expression, the rigid posture, the hand resting near the belt, the look that said this wasn't a friendly check-in. This was an approach. Caldwell's stomach tightened. He'd seen this before, not to him personally, but in his courtroom. Black men stopped for looking suspicious, for not belonging, for existing in spaces where someone decided they shouldn't be. He stayed calm, kept his hands visible, waited. The officer stopped at the edge of the driveway. "Hey," Foster said, his tone sharp. "I need to see your ID." Caldwell frowned. "ID? For what?" "I got a call about a suspicious person in this area. I need to verify who you are." "I live here. This is my house." "Can you prove that?" Caldwell's jaw tightened. "I don't need to prove I live in my own house." "What's this about?" Foster stepped closer. "I'm asking for your ID. You gonna cooperate or not?" And there it was. The question that wasn't really a question. The demand disguised as a choice. How do you think Officer Foster's assumptions about Marcus Caldwell shaped his actions in this situation? Drop a comment. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Marcus Caldwell had spent years in courtrooms. He'd questioned witnesses, cross-examined defendants, and ruled on constitutional issues. He knew the law better than most police officers ever would, and he knew this stop was unlawful. "Officer," Caldwell said, his voice measured, "I'm standing in my own driveway. I haven't committed any crime. You have no reasonable suspicion to detain me, and you certainly have no probable cause to demand my identification." Foster's face flushed. "I'm a police officer. I have the authority to ask for ID. You have the authority to ask. I have the right to refuse. Unless you can articulate a specific, articulable suspicion that I've committed, am committing, or am about to commit a crime." Foster's hand moved closer to his belt. "Are you refusing to comply?" "I'm exercising my constitutional rights. There's a difference. You're being difficult. I'm being informed. And if you continue this stop without legal justification, you're violating the Fourth Amendment." Foster's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to people talking to him like this. Most people, when confronted by a police officer, complied. They showed ID. They answered questions. They deferred. But Marcus Caldwell wasn't most people. And Jake Foster couldn't handle it. "Turn around and put your hands on your head," Foster said, his voice rising. Caldwell's eyes widened. "You're detaining me? You're refusing to cooperate." "I'm refusing an unlawful order. That's not a crime. You're making this worse." "I'm not making anything worse. You are. You stopped me without cause. You're escalating without justification. And you're about to make the worst mistake of your career." Foster grabbed his handcuffs. "Last chance. Turn around." Caldwell stayed where he was, his voice calm but firm. "Officer, I'm going to tell you something right now, and I need you to listen very carefully. I am a Superior Court judge in Miami-Dade County. I am standing in my own driveway, on my own property, heading to the grocery store. You have no legal basis for this stop, and if you proceed, you will face consequences." Foster hesitated, but only for a moment, because in his mind, this was a challenge, a test of his authority, and backing down now would make him look weak. "I don't care who you say you are," Foster said. "Right now, you're refusing a lawful order. Turn around. It's not a lawful order, and I can prove who I am." I said turn around. Caldwell's patience was running out. He could feel the situation spiraling. He could see the rookie making decision after decision that would destroy his career. But he also knew that arguing with an armed officer who'd already decided to escalate rarely ended well. So he made a choice. "I'm going to reach into my jacket pocket," Caldwell said slowly, clearly. "I'm going to retrieve my judicial identification. My hands are visible. I'm not a threat." Foster's hand moved to his service weapon. "Don't reach for anything. I'm getting my ID." You asked for identification. I'm providing it. Keep your hands where I can see them. They are where you can see them. I'm telling you what I'm doing before I do it. That's called transparency. Caldwell moved slowly, deliberately, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a leather credential case and flipped it open. The badge was unmistakable. Gold. Official. Embossed with the seal of the state of Florida. Superior Court Judge. Miami-Dade County. Marcus Caldwell. Foster froze. His hand, still hovering near his weapon, slowly lowered. His face went pale. His eyes moved from the badge to Caldwell's face and back again. You're a judge? Yes. I told you that. Twice. Foster's mouth opened, but no words came out. Caldwell's voice was quiet, controlled, but laced with barely contained anger. You just threatened to arrest a sitting judge. In his own driveway. For the crime of going to buy groceries. Do you understand what you've done? Foster stammered. I didn't. I was just. You assumed. You saw a black man in a hoodie and decided he didn't belong. You didn't verify. You didn't investigate. You just made an assumption and escalated. I got a call. A vague call about a suspicious person. Which you didn't verify. Which you didn't follow up on. You just saw me and decided I fit whatever narrative was playing in your head. Foster took a step back, panic setting in. Judge, I'm sorry, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't verify. You didn't think. You just acted on bias and assumption. A neighbor had come out onto their porch, watching the confrontation. Another was recording on their phone from across the street. Caldwell noticed them but didn't acknowledge them. His focus was entirely on Foster. Officer, what's your name? Foster. Jake Foster. Officer Foster, I want your badge number, your supervisor's name, and the number for your internal affairs division. Right now. Foster fumbled for his notepad, hands shaking, and wrote down the information. Caldwell took the paper, folded it carefully, and put it in his pocket. I'm filing a formal complaint. Against you and your department. For racial profiling, unlawful detention, and violation of my civil rights. Judge, please. I'm also calling my attorney. And I'm speaking to the media. Because what just happened here is exactly the kind of behavior that destroys trust between communities and law enforcement. Foster looked like he was going to be sick. Do you understand what you've done? Caldwell asked again, his voice softer now, but no less intense. You didn't just stop a random person. You stopped a judge. Someone who knows the law. Someone who has the credibility, resources, and standing to fight back. But what about everyone else? What about the black men who get stopped like this every day but don't have a badge to show? What happens to them? Foster had no answer. Go back to your car, Caldwell said finally. And when you get back to the station, you tell your supervisor what happened. All of it. Because if I find out you tried to cover this up, it's going to be much worse for you. Foster nodded mutely and walked back to his patrol car, moving like someone in shock. Caldwell stood in his driveway, watching him leave, his hands shaking with adrenaline and anger. His morning trip to the grocery store was over before it began. What should Officer Foster have done differently in this situation? How can law enforcement officers be better trained to avoid these mistakes? Let me know. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. By noon, the story had begun to spread. Not through official channels. The Miami Police Department hadn't released a statement yet. But through the neighborhood. Through the video recorded by Caldwell's neighbor. Through the legal community in Miami, where word travels fast when a sitting judge is unlawfully detained. By evening, it was on the local news. By Monday morning, it was national. Miami judge stopped by police in his own driveway. Racial profiling alleged after officer detains black judge. Superior Court judge files complaint against rookie cop. The headlines wrote themselves. Judge Marcus Caldwell didn't want media attention. He didn't seek it. He didn't call press conferences or post on social media. But he also didn't hide from it. Because what happened to him mattered. Not just for him personally, but for everyone who didn't have the privilege of a judicial title to protect them. On Monday afternoon, Caldwell held a brief press conference outside the courthouse. On Saturday morning, I was stopped by a Miami police officer while standing in my own driveway, he said, reading from prepared remarks. I was not committing a crime. I was not behaving suspiciously. I was simply existing as a black man in a neighborhood where I live. The officer demanded identification without cause. When I declined and explained my rights, he threatened to arrest me. When I revealed that I'm a sitting judge, he backed down, not because his actions were wrong, but because he realized I had the authority to hold him accountable. But that's the problem. Accountability shouldn't depend on having a title. It shouldn't depend on knowing the law. It shouldn't depend on being able to produce credentials that make an officer think twice. It should be the standard for everyone, regardless of race, class, or profession. I'm filing a formal complaint with the Miami Police Department. I'm also pursuing legal action, not for revenge, not for attention, but because this pattern must stop. And it will only stop when there are real, tangible consequences for officers who abuse their authority. The room erupted with questions, but Caldwell walked away without answering them. He'd said what needed to be said. The Miami Police Department launched an internal affairs investigation within 24 hours. Officer Jake Foster was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. His body camera footage was reviewed. What it showed was damning. Foster approaching without legal justification. Caldwell calmly explaining his rights. Foster escalating to detention threats. Caldwell revealing his judicial credentials. Foster's immediate panic once he realized his mistake. The timeline was clear. The violation was obvious. Foster's supervisors reviewed his file and found troubling patterns. His training evaluations had noted impulsivity and poor judgment. His field training officer had recommended additional supervision before clearing him for solo patrol. But those recommendations had been overridden because of staffing needs. The department had put an undertrained, overeager rookie on the street, and now they were paying the price. Public reaction was swift and intense. Legal experts weighed in, calling the stop a textbook example of racial profiling and Fourth Amendment violation. Civil rights organizations demanded accountability and systemic reform. The Miami-Dade Black Judges Association issued a statement supporting Caldwell and calling for a comprehensive review of police training and oversight. Even some law enforcement voices spoke out, acknowledging that the stop was indefensible and that Foster's actions undermined trust in policing. But there were also defenders, people who argued Foster was just doing his job, that Caldwell should have complied, that if he'd just shown his ID from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Caldwell addressed those arguments directly in an op-ed published in the Miami Herald. The question is not whether I should have shown my ID. The question is whether Officer Foster had any legal right to demand it in the first place. He didn't. And no amount of compliance would change the fact that the stop itself was unlawful and racially motivated. Caldwell hired one of Miami's top civil rights attorneys and filed a federal lawsuit. The complaint named Officer Jake Foster and the city of Miami as defendants. The claims were comprehensive. Fourth Amendment violation, unlawful seizure without reasonable suspicion, equal protection violation, racial profiling and discrimination violation of Florida's Civil Rights Act, intentional infliction of emotional distress, municipal liability for inadequate training and supervision. The evidence was overwhelming. Body camera footage, witness statements, Foster's training records showing documented concerns that were ignored, department-wide data showing patterns of disproportionate stops in black neighborhoods. The city's attorneys reviewed the case and came to a grim conclusion. This was indefensible. A sitting judge, unlawfully detained, on his own property, by a rookie with documented training deficiencies, all captured on video. Settlement negotiations began immediately. Officer Jake Foster was terminated 8 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final. Officer Foster engaged in an unlawful stop, racially profiled a citizen, and violated department policy and constitutional standards. His actions have exposed the city to significant legal liability and damaged public trust. His employment is terminated immediately. His law enforcement certification was revoked by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. His name was entered into the National Decertification Index. He would never work in law enforcement again. Do you think Officer Foster should be fired, or should there be a different way to address his actions? What should be the next step in this case? Comment below. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The case never went to trial. The city of Miami, facing overwhelming evidence and catastrophic publicity, settled 9 months after the incident. $7 million. Paid to Judge Marcus Caldwell. The settlement also included a public acknowledgement that the stop was unlawful and racially motivated mandatory bias training for all Miami PD officers, independent review of stop data to identify patterns of racial profiling, creation of a civilian oversight board with subpoena power, revision of training protocols to emphasize constitutional standards before field deployment. The reforms were significant. The money was substantial. But for Marcus Caldwell, neither was enough. 6 months after the settlement, Caldwell spoke at a police training seminar, an invitation he initially declined but eventually accepted. He stood before a room full of officers, rookies and veterans alike, and told them what happened. Not the sanitized version, not the PR-friendly narrative, the real story. "I'm a judge," he said. "I've sentenced people to prison. I've ruled on life-changing cases. I understand the law better than most people in this room ever will. And I was still treated like a criminal. In my own driveway. For the crime of existing while black. If that can happen to me, with all my credentials, my authority, my resources, what happens to everyone else? What happens to the teenager walking home from school? The father heading to work? The grandmother sitting on her porch? They don't have judicial titles. They don't have law degrees. They don't have the ability to file federal lawsuits. So they just endure it. They live with it. They teach their children to survive it. And that's not acceptable. You all took an oath to protect and serve. That means everyone. Not just the people who look like you. Not just the people who make you comfortable. Everyone. And if you can't do that, if you can't see a black man in a hoodie without assuming he's a criminal, then you have no business wearing that badge." The room was silent. Some officers looked uncomfortable. Some looked defensive. But a few, just a few, looked like they were actually listening. And maybe, Caldwell thought, that was enough to start. Jake Foster never returned to law enforcement. He moved out of Miami 6 months after his termination, relocating to a small town in Georgia. He works in construction now, according to public records. He's avoided all media attention, but his name remains a case study. It's taught in police academies as an example of what not to do. It's cited in civil rights litigation. It's referenced in policy debates about police reform. He wanted to be a cop. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted to prove himself. Instead, he became a cautionary tale about what happens when bias, poor training, and unchecked authority collide. Judge Marcus Caldwell continues to serve on the bench. He still lives in the same house. He still walks out to his driveway on Saturday mornings. But he's more aware now, more cautious, more conscious of how he might be perceived. And he hates that awareness, because it means Jake Foster succeeded in making him feel like he doesn't belong in his own neighborhood. But Caldwell refuses to let that awareness turn into fear. Instead, he's channeled it into action. He's spoken at dozens of events about racial profiling. He's advised departments on constitutional policing. He's mentored young black attorneys and judges, helping them navigate systems that weren't designed with them in mind. The $7 million settlement didn't erase what happened, but it sent a message. There are consequences for treating people as suspects simply because of their skin color. And maybe, just maybe, those consequences will make the next rookie officer think twice before making the same assumptions Jake Foster did. This case isn't just about one judge or one rookie cop. It's about a system that allows undertrained officers to patrol communities they don't understand. It's about bias that goes unchecked until someone with power gets targeted. It's about the daily indignities faced by black Americans who are presumed guilty until proven innocent. Judge Marcus Caldwell won his case. He got a settlement. He got accountability. But accountability for one officer doesn't fix a broken system. Real change requires more than lawsuits. It requires training that goes beyond checking boxes. It requires oversight that actually holds people responsible. It requires a culture shift that values rights over ego and humanity over assumptions. Until then, there will be more Jake Fosters, more Marcus Caldwells, more stories that shouldn't have happened in the first place. The question is, are we willing to do the work to prevent them?